Thank you all for being here. This is a really exciting day for Wooster. And I want to start by thanking Dr. Black for his efforts to and the James Marshall Chapel Society, which also helped to pull this together. So we'd love to thank you. And part of what Dr. Black has been doing in the last several years is really working hard on trying to improve and sort of make better our conversation with colleges. So last year, many of you remember, we had 8 deans or assistant deans of admission who came here and also were at the Richmond Library to talk to our community about the admissions process and give us a college perspective. And this year, we're lucky enough to have Dr. José Bowen here, who's the president of Goucher College. And why is Dr. Bowen here? So we've all heard of Google, right? We all know Google's changing the world, changing how we think, changing how we learn. It's a successful organization, corporation in so many ways, and a lot of people want to work for Google, or better yet, they want to invent the next Google, right? Or maybe work at the next Google. And Google, at its heart, is built on coding, systems engineers, computer software engineers, highly expert people. So, if you were to guess where expertise ranks in the 5 most important things that Google looks at when it hires someone, you might think, well, that's got to be number 1, right? We've got to have these experts in order to make this work. And the reality is, expertise is actually 5th out of the 5 things that they say are most important. So expertise is 5th. So skills and knowledge, right? We talk about that here. We talk about the skills that you need in order to build knowledge. Number 4 is ownership. So taking responsibility for your learning. Okay? That's basically the ownership that Google's talking about. And that's kind of what we talk about. We want you to take ownership for your learning. We want you to be honest with yourself about what's happening and how do you make it better. The 3rd thing Google says is important is leadership. And when they're talking about leadership, they're not talking about get out in front and lead the charge kind of leadership. That's helpful sometimes. What they're really talking about is collaboration. And are you someone who can be in a collaborative environment and have the courage to speak, to listen, and to act? So behave as a leader within an environment where people are working together to solve problems. The second most important thing, and this is one we really don't hear much about, is humility. So Google looks for people who understand that they don't know everything. And actually the job is for them to learn more, but also admit to themselves and to the people they're working with that I don't know everything, but our job is to kind of try to figure things out. And the number 1 thing that they look for in their candidates is ability to learn. So if you're someone who can demonstrate to them that I've thought about how I learn, and I've actually demonstrated what I can do as a learner, you're going to be one of their ideal candidates. So the goal is not for all of you to work at Google, or even want to work at Google, or a company like it. But it's a very forward-thinking company, and they've done some amazing things. So we do want to think about the way that they're thinking about what's out there. What are these attributes? And how are they going to help you in what is being called the information and knowledge economy? They're the key to the entrepreneurial economy, the digital economy, the sustainability economy, all of the different ways where problems need to be solved, and people are going to work. Those 5 attributes are very important. The top 4, being honest with oneself, being reflective, being collaborative, and a willing expert learner, are also keys to successful relationships in life. And we try to talk a lot about the fact that at the end of the day, that's probably what's most important. if you have good relationships in your personal life and in your professional life, you're much more likely to be happy and actually be successful and more productive. So we've been working very hard to try to get you to recognize these skills and dispositions, and unfortunately sometimes students will go off to college and they'll come back and we'll say, like, how's it going? Are you taking it to the next level? Because you must be collaborating and thinking and doing all this great stuff and learning even more how to learn. And sometimes what we hear is, well, actually, no, I've spent most of the year in big lectures, or I've been in a context where someone's just sort of talking at me, and maybe I'm working on the side a little bit with the group, but it's not exactly what I expected based on what we worked on here. And that's part of our goal of being more in a conversation with colleges. And there are colleges and universities that are thinking about this sort of Google-like requirement that people be prepared for a different kind of economy and a different kind of workplace and a different kind of life. And we're extremely lucky to have Dr. Bowen here because, and I'm sure he's going to demonstrate this today, but if you go and watch his TEDx talks or other YouTube videos he has where he's talking about teaching and learning, it becomes pretty clear right away that you're in the presence of a master teacher who's thought a lot about how people learn, but you're also in the presence of a master learner, which really is the key to being able to teach. If you view yourself as someone who's always needing to learn more, it's a lot easier to teach people how to learn. So before turning it over to the Madrigals to sing and then Bentley to formally introduce Dr. Bowen, I did want to thank him for leading his college into what I would consider to be the vanguard and to what needs to happen, which is really focusing on how people learn and not necessarily what they need to learn, but how they need to learn and how can they use that when they go off to be successful, not just in work, but in life in general. So I thank him again for being here. It's a rare thing for a college president to come to a small, humble, independent day school like our own, and I recognize that and really appreciate it. Yeah, we can get to that. A wonderful singing group, and then Bethany will come up to that.
Mr. Burns, distinguished guests, faculty, staff, and students, good morning. My name is Bethany Jones, and I'm the current James Marshall Chapter Leader. I'm honored to introduce to all of you our guest speaker, Dr. José Bowen. Dr. Bowen is president of Goucher College, a liberal arts college of approximately 1,500 undergraduate and 900 graduate students. Located in Townsend, Maryland, Dr. Bowen began his teaching career at Stanford University in 1982 as director of jazz ensembles. In 1994, he became the founding director of the Center of History and Analysis for Recorded Music, also known as CHARM, at the University of Southampton in England. He has written over 100 scholarly articles for the Journal of Musicology, the Journal for the Society of American Music, the Journal of Musicological Research, Performance Practice Review, 19th Century Music, Notes, Music Theory Spectrum, the Journal of the Royal Musical Associations, Studi Musicali, and the New Grove Dictionary of Music and Musicians, and in books from Oxford and Princeton University Presses. He also has a TED Talk on Beethoven as Bill Gates. Dr. Bowen has also been a pioneer in active learning and the use of technology in the classroom, including podcasts and online games. And he has been featured in the Wall Street Journal, Newsweek, USA Today, US News, and World Report, and on NPR for his book, Teaching Naked, How Moving Technology Out of Your College Classroom Will Improve Student Learning. He's currently working on transforming the university, Learning for Change, a comprehensive approach to integrating campus life with massively better classrooms, and using the latest research on learning and adolescent development to focus college on opening minds in the post-technology era. Dr. Bowen holds 4 degrees from Stanford University, a Bachelor of Science in Chemistry, a Master of Arts in Music Composition, a Master of Arts in Humanities, and a joint PhD in Musicology and Humanities. Stanford honored him as a Distinguished Alumni Scholar in 2010. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. José Bowen.
Thank you for that introduction. Thank you for having me. And what he said, that was great. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about 2 themes today. The theme is what you want out of life and what you are going to try to accomplish. And so they really fall into 2 categories. The first is jobs, which people are talking about a lot these days. The whole jobs, financial, not living in your parents' basement thing that some of you might care about. We as your parents do care about that. We would prefer that at some point you didn't just live in the basement. But that's not the only thing we want. We really do that thing that your parents say that we want you to be happy. It's really true. And it is the thing that matters most. And the relationship between those 2 things is important. So I'm going to go back to this idea about the knowledge economy, and my thesis is that actually the knowledge economy is actually over. Right? We've entered a new age, what was called the information age, for a long time. That's actually over. We're in the learning economy. We really are, as you heard before, that what Google's looking for is people who can learn. Most of the jobs that you will have not yet been invented yet. So the truth is that colleges can't actually teach you most of the content and the knowledge that you need for those jobs. Yeah, some of it, there are some skills, there's some stuff that you're going to have to learn, but it's a lot less than when I was in school. And that's probably because of that thing in your pocket, that our relationship to knowledge has truly changed. So when I went to college, if you wanted to know something, you had to go to this place called the library and open these things called books. Especially this book called the Encyclopedia. So this encyclopedia thing was a set of books that usually looked the same, right? They had information in them. What was really interesting about the encyclopedia is that there were no jokes in it. There were no cat videos in the encyclopedia. So in fact, the encyclopedia, while it wasn't always right, It was often out of date. Those articles were written by people. It was relatively reliable. So I grew up in a world where knowledge was relatively reliable, but really, really scarce. So in order to get knowledge, you had to go to a classroom, you had to go to the library, you had to know somebody, you had to have access to books or something like that. So most people had no access to this. There was even a thing called a phone book, which was a book that you might have to run at home, but you might have to go to the library and you look up stuff. So that if you wanted to know something, it wasn't with you. So you now live in a world that's entirely different. You live in a world where you carry around the world's library. In your pocket today, you have access to more information than in any college classroom, than in any college library, than in any professor's head. You have that right there in your phone. You have the human genome is in your pocket. The congressional records in your pocket. The British Museum's holdings are in your pocket. All of the Beethoven manuscripts are in your pocket. This matters to me as a Beethoven scholar, because when I was in school, I want to actually see the Fifth Symphony. I want to see what it looks like in Beethoven's hand. Well, you're going to have to buy a plane ticket. You're going to have to write a letter. You're going to have to go to Germany. You're going to put on white gloves. You're going to sit there until they bring out the little box in the dark, and then maybe they'll let you look at a page. And now you can just Google it, and you can find them. They're all online in your pocket right now. So that's a very different world. The problem is that your phone is not mostly full of Beethoven manuscripts in the human genome. It's mostly full of cat videos. Right? The internet is a quarter video. And the internet is also full of all sorts of garbage. Mostly it's stuff that people make up. Right? Because, again, when I went to school, if you went to the library, there were books in the library that were published by publishers. And someone somewhere said, you know, we'll publish that. Or, no, we won't publish that because you made it up. Or, you didn't do any research. Or, we just think that's garbage. And now any idiot in his underwear can post whatever he wants on Facebook. Right? So, in fact, if you think about it, right, most of what's on the internet is posted by people in their underwear. So, is that really the source of information that you want to use? So what that means is that knowing more has actually decreased in value. That what you know is important, but it's less important because your phone knows more. Right? And the ability to think, to be critical, to analyze, to discern, is actually going up in the world. The ability to figure out, no, I'm skeptical about that. I think this is more likely to be true. All of that other stuff has become more important. But as a society, we're deeply confused about this. Right? We're so confused about it, we actually call it a smartphone. Think about it. Is your phone smart? Your phone knows more, right? Your phone knows more than you will ever know. It has access to information. That's not the same as being smart. Smart is the ability to change your mind. That's really what makes you smart. But we're confused because we go, well, the phone knows all those answers, so it must be smart. And that's actually a really bad thing for our society because it makes us think that that's what we were trying to do. And medical schools, law schools are all trying to grapple with this. Because the impression when you go to a professor is that, well, they're the professor, they're smart, they know lots of stuff, they always have the answer. And so when I talk to faculty, I always tell them, you don't always want to say the answer, even if you know it, because it's a bad role model. Right? And of course, their title is a little bit kooky too. Right? Why do we call them professors? Because in the old days, their primary job was professing. They knew stuff. They would talk, you would write it down. That's because it was either that or go to the encyclopedia and write it down, right? You didn't have a lot of other options to learn stuff. So if you wanted lectures on physics, or if you wanted to know poetry, right, you had to find a book of poetry or a lecture on poetry, and those things were relatively scarce. And now they're abundantly common. So the question is, does more information help? I've already said more information doesn't make you smarter. Does it help in other ways? So think about this. Does more fitness equipment help? If I put an exercise bike in every room of your house, 2 in the bathroom, 3 in the kitchen, would it help? It doesn't help, right? It's just more stuff that you don't need. So there's a job for somebody called a fitness coach. Right? What's a fitness coach do? Give them a bike. No, we're not believing a fitness coach just gets on the bike, right? He stands there in his Speedo. Right? No, because a fitness coach actually is a little more. So a fitness coach does know about fitness. He or she does know about your body, knows about the equipment, knows about nutrition, those sorts of things. But what's the real reason that people pay a fitness coach? Right? Why is this a multi-billion-dollar industry? Right? What are you really paying your coach for? To know you. Right? The first thing we do is we say, why do you want to do this? What is the goal here? What matters to you? What motivates you? Oh, you want to wear that dress to the prom, huh? Pedal faster. That's a non-trivial connection, right? The teaching really is about that connection between what matters to your students, which is where all learning starts. It only ends with what matters to me, the teacher. It starts with you, right? So think about teaching someone how to swim, right? It's like, okay, so you want to learn how to swim? Right, there's the deep end, go. Right, I can push you in the deep end. Is that really good teaching? I mean, it might teach some people how to swim. What's the first question a swim teacher should ask you? How do you feel about water? Do you like water? Are you afraid of water? Are you comfortable in water? Oh, you're scared to death of water? Let's go down to the shower. Right? That decision, that teaching bit. So my new title for our faculty is not professor. It's cognitive coach. That's really what you're looking for in your college faculty. Right? You're looking for people who will get you, who will understand you, and be able to connect you with what matters to them. Right? The idea of getting inside your head. Because again, learning, being smart, is the ability to change your mind, which means when you learn something new, what really matters is what happens next. Okay, I memorized that stuff. Okay, I know more, I must be smart. No, smart is the ability to say, so I've learned something new. How does it change what I already knew? Because that's what learning is about. It has to change all the things you already know. It's the system that matters. My favorite example of this, which will matter more to your parents than to you, is the idea of keyless entry to your car. Anybody have seen one of these cars where you have a fob and you put it in your pocket and there's no place to put the key? Right? So for you, it's like, what's a key? Right? What's a car key? So for me, right, there's a thing called a car key, which is literally a key, like you put in the door, that you put in your car, and you turn the key, and then when you turn it, the car starts. So for people like me, who have a system in our heads of how knowledge works and how this works, so what do? Old people like me, every time we approach the car, we take the key out of our pocket. We walk to the car, we open the door, and then we get in there and we go, now what do? I'm holding this object in my hand. I'm looking for a place to put it, and there's no place to put it. Right? So I put it down. Last night we did an event, and the valet comes running, and somebody says, you took your key with you, right? Your car is about, I can't restart your car, because I said, how can you leave your car with the key? And we left the key in it, right? So this took me a while. I said, well, and of course they call it keyless, which is also bad, because it's not a key. It really isn't the key. The new thing that starts your car, it's a personal identity device that tells the car who you are. It has nothing to do with keys. So I had to figure out that I had to actually leave the thing in my pocket, and that it wasn't a key. But until I told myself it's not a key, I couldn't figure out how to use the new car. Right? So the point is that you can invent a new technology, you can find a new piece of knowledge, but if you still use it the way you use the old thing, you're not actually making anybody any different. You're not actually smart. So smart is the ability to rethink the things that you already know to change your mind. So the question is, what are you trying to get out of college? And what should you look for, and what are you trying to get? And so again, coming back to those two things, you do want both of those things. So the country is now concerned, everybody wants a job. College is expensive, you probably figured that out. So if you want to spend if you're going to spend all this money, you should get some return on it. The problem is that the jobs of the future haven't yet been invented. So this idea that you're going to predict what the job is going to be is a false one. So I hear a lot of students say, well, I have a major for me and another major for my parents. You haven't heard that here, of course. But parents, if you're here, if you really know what the jobs of the future are going to be, if you have a crystal ball, then I'd love some stock tips. Right? I'd love to know where to invest my money. Because the truth is, I don't know what the jobs of the future are going to be. Because nobody does. There's actually a study from Cambridge University, came out about 6 months ago, So what are the two majors that are most likely to be done by robots in the next 15 years? Totally be useless. Useless majors for the future. Top of the list, accounting and finance. Now that's a prediction. I have no idea if they're right. They don't know if they're right. It's a prediction, right? Come back in 50 years and we'll see. But the problem is that nobody knows. We really just don't know what the jobs of the future are going to be. We don't know what robots are going to do. So it may be that accounting is useless and it's all done, it's all automated in 10 to 15 years. So if you pick accounting as a major because you think it's going to be a good job, you're making a bet. You're making a very high-risk bet. So don't bet with your life. So I don't know what majors are going to be. Even if you say, well, but computer science, right? I could go work for one of those companies in Silicon Valley. So half of what you learn in a computer science degree is useless in 2 years. It's basically like being an expert in the iPhone 1. Right? So, I mean, that's not a bad thing to be when the iPhone 1 is fresh. But 2 years from now, is that really going to help you? Well, if you learn the iPhone 2, the iPhone 3, right? If you keep learning new things, it'll be fine. So your real point of going to college is to continue to learn how to learn how to learn. All right? Say that 6 times. Or being a self-regulated learner. That's really what a liberal arts education should produce. Right? Self-regulated learners. So that means that cliche about finding your passion, it's actually not a bad idea. In fact, I'd say they're passions. It's plural. Because passions are transferable. So if you love accounting, be an accounting major. That'd be great. Because what you're learning is not accounting. Yes, you'll know something about accounting when you graduate. You could be an accountant for a while. But then when accounting goes away, you'll have learned to love something. You'll have learned to love the learning to be an accountant. And you say, I'm going to apply that to something else. So that's equally true of art history or philosophy or peace studies or any of the other kinds of majors that are out there. You can learn to love that discipline and learn to love new things and figure out what happens when I learn new things and how do I change my mind. If you do that over and over and over again, right, that cycle from being complacent and thinking you know a lot of stuff to being curious to then being confused and then back again, if you feel comfortable in the discomfort of that cycle, you'll be able to learn anything. And you'll be able to take one of those jobs that haven't yet been invented. I know it's hard to believe. I saw my daughter yesterday, who's a director of social media in New York, Fifth Avenue advertising firm, because every 24-year-old should be a director. You too will be a director very soon. But she's the director of social media, and so of course you all think that sounds totally normal. And of course I remember the day when the first tweet was sent. I remember the day when I had never heard of social media because there was no such thing. There was no such thing as social media. So there were no college majors in social media. There were no jobs in social media. There was no such thing. It was a thing that didn't exist. Then you can now be a director of it. So the truth is, there are lots of jobs, lots of things that you will be that don't yet exist. You will be the director of brain inserts. Well, I have no idea, right? There are all sorts of things that have not yet been invented. The other way to think about this is, do you really want to go to a dentist who was the top of her class at Harvard 40 years ago, best student in the country, hasn't learned a thing since, right? Do you really want to go to a dentist who went to medical school before there was this thing called Novocaine and never bothered to learn it because I don't need that newfangled stuff, right? So, right, that just wasn't taught in dental school and because it didn't exist. So, this idea of being a continuous learner. So what then are you supposed to focus on? So at Goucher, we call this the 3 R's. And we do a couple of things differently. One is we send everybody to study abroad. And we do that partly because the thing that happens when you study abroad is that you get uncomfortable, right? And I want to repeat that cycle of being uncomfortable a lot. But the other reason is that when you travel abroad, the first thing that happens is you discover that all those people out there talk funny. They all have an accent. And then you realize, actually, wait, hang on, it's me who has the accent. And then you take a level more, you realize, actually, everyone has an accent. There is no way to speak without an accent. Everyone who speaks has an accent. And in the same way, everybody who thinks has an accent. You have a thought accent. You make assumptions about the world based upon where you're from, your race, your culture, the life that you've lived, what you've been exposed to. And so going to another part of the world exposes you both to your speaking, but also to your thought accent, which is a really important part of being able to say, actually, I'm probably making assumptions about how all of this works. So my favorite story about this is I took a group of students to Timbuktu, right, which is in Mali. I wouldn't recommend going there now. It's become a little more dangerous, but it was less dangerous when we were there. So we had to rent some cars to make part of the journey. You make part of the journey on camel and part of the journey by boat, but we also rented some four-wheel drives to drive through the Sahara Desert. So I'm talking to the rental car guy, and he says, okay. And I've rented lots of cars. I've been to lots of countries. I've been to the rental car. Great, fine. He says, okay, so how many tires do you want? Nobody's ever asked me how many tires. I mean, it comes with 4, right? I said, well, how many do you recommend? And he said, 5. Okay, we'll take 5 tires. And we needed 6. I was a tire short. And so we spent a day on the way back wheeling a tire about 30 miles down the road looking for a 6th tire. Because the roads were really bad. In fact, they weren't really roads. So we ran into stuff and we had to change tires periodically and blow up tires whenever we went past a place where we could exchange a tire. So we actually needed more tires. So the point of the story is not always rent the 6th tire. That's not the point of the story. The point of the story is I had an assumption because I've grown up in a country where you don't change a tire every day, where there are roads. And so it never occurred to me that part of the discussion about the rental car, which by the way you can pay for in cash before you leave, and only crisp 100s, please. That was the thing. When I went to Mali, they said, so you got to go to the bank. I said, okay, because don't take any credit cards. You need to bring crisp 100s, no 20s, and they have to be new. Go to the bank and say, get absolutely new $100 bills. And they were right. So I get to the airport in Bamako, and there's a guy with a suitcase, right? I'm thinking, there's a guy with a suitcase handcuffed to his wrist. I said, well, this looks like a drug dealer, right? So the guy's got a suitcase handcuffed to his wrist. And so people are like going up to him and they're changing money, and I think, I'll wait till I get to the bank. And then he left, and he was the bank. And he was waiting for my crisp 100s, and so I had to go run after him because that was the only way to get money. Nobody else wanted my crisp 100s except for that guy with the suitcase. Right, so all of those are just assumptions. So again, the goal of the story is, well, okay, always trade money with the guy with the suitcase, with the handcuffs. That's not the point of the story. The point of the story is that your assumptions are going to change. So going to someplace radically different puts you in a different frame of mind. So we require study abroad. We require 3 years of writing. We require multiple years of what we call data analytics, because I don't know what the jobs of the future are, but I know there are 2 things you're going to have to do. You're going to have to use both sides of the brain, communication and writing, and big data analysis will be part of that. We also require racial and cultural competency over 4 years. So it's not a course, right? It's something that we make, it's a goal, it's not just a process. Study abroad is part of that. So we encapsulate all of this as what I call the new 3 R's. So some of your parents will remember the old 3 R's. But the new 3 R's are based upon the data that tells us how can you have the life that I just described. So the 2 things that you want, or the 2 things that your parents want, are a job, right? Some way to support yourself, but also to be happy. You need both of those things. It also turns out, by the way, that the person who makes the most money is not always the happiest, right? It turns out once you've made about $75,000 a year, it levels off. The people who make $100,000 a year, and people who make $1 million a year, people who make $10 million a year, there's no more happiness to be involved. People are just as happy at all of those income levels once you kind of meet basic sustenance. So if you want to have a job, you're going to learn those things. That's great. But the other part of this is happiness. Now, how do I measure happiness? How do I actually figure out who has a happier life? So it turns out Gallup has figured out how to do this. It's called the Gallup-Purdue Index. And the Gallup company, you've heard of the Gallup poll, their actual primary thing that they do is measure workplace satisfaction. That's actually the core of their business. They're in all but 2 countries in the world, one of which is North Korea. And they measure workplace satisfaction, and they have what they call 5 measures of well-being, right? So one is personal, physical, financial, but also social and community. How engaged are you in your community? They ask questions like, does your work have meaning? Do you feel like your job contributes to the world? Do you have a purpose in life? Do you feel like you are fulfilling a mission? Do you have enough money to get by? Do you have lots of friends? Those sorts of things. So they've put all that together and come up with these 5 measures of well-being. And so schools are now giving these to their graduates. Workplaces are giving them to their employees to figure out who's actually happy, or who's having a more fulfilled, purposeful life. Because it turns out that actually matters. The sense of my job matters. I do something that matters to me, matters to other people, it matters to my community. It makes a difference in the world. But that leads to a life of more fulfillment. So the next question is, and our graduates, again, we track our graduates. Our graduates are twice the national average to be thriving in all 5 elements. But more importantly, they ask the question, what is it that happens in college that relates to what happens later in life? What are the things that happen to you in the next 4 years in college that actually will lead to this life of greater purpose, happiness, again, physical well-being, right? Lower divorce rates, all sorts of things are related to this. So those 3 things ended up being our 3 R's. So the first are relationships. The most important thing that happens in college, especially in the first year or 2, is a sense of fitting in, a sense of feeling valued, a sense of people to talk to. And most importantly, finding a mentor. A professor who cares about your learning. You know that most Americans go to college, and after 4 years, when asked the question, did one professor excite you about learning? Did one professor care about you as a person? That most Americans answer no. Most seniors, upon leaving college, say not one professor, not one person in 4 years made me more excited about learning. Not one person cared about me as a learner. So think about that when you look at the size of colleges, and when you look at the, well, should I go to the cheap big state school versus the more expensive, smaller place where class size is smaller. I did a session at the University of Georgia a couple of months ago, and I was teaching all their faculty. I was doing one of these workshops, and I said, well, what's the smallest class? What's the size of the class? This is all our freshman teachers. And they said, well, we just built 6 rooms that are 700 seats. We have one classroom that's only 450, but most of our classrooms are 600 or 700. That's more than your whole school, right? Imagine having all of your freshman courses in classes of 700, right? So it's pretty easy to see that in that situation, you might not find a professor who cares about you. So notice that when you, and all the research, when you say, you know, what matters to you 40 years from now, what matters 10 years from now, it turns out that nobody ever says the thing that mattered in college were courses, right? Credits, semesters, midterms, right? Those things that appear like they matter a lot. It's the relationships, the people, individual research. But again, I'm thinking most importantly, relationships. Somebody who cares about you. You're going to be a great poet. I think you're going to be a great physicist. Finding those people. So loose structures tend to matter for this. So we try to not overly determine, you must have a mentor. It's going to be him, right? So when we talk about people who, here's a system where you can take a faculty member to lunch. Here's a voucher, right? Loose structures that are more likely to encourage those kinds of interactions. So relationships really matter. When they say go to office hours, they're not kidding. That really is the most important thing that you can do in college. Build that network, build those relationships. Find somebody who gets you, who just want to push you in the deep end. Who says, let me understand who you are as a person, as a learner, what you want to do. Relationships truly matter. The second R is resilience. The people who have more resilience do better, because the bad news is life sucks. I'm having this conversation with my daughter at the moment, too, about after first day of work, she calls me and says, Dad, I don't want she got a job right after college, right after graduation. She says, Dad, I don't understand. You mean you have to go to work at 10 o'clock every day? That's a joke, because it's 10 o'clock. Actually, no, I've been there by 3 hours at 10 o'clock. Then the second day, I get a call, Dad, you mean they take out taxes right away? Yes, they start taking out taxes the second you start working. Right? right? And then, you know, recently, do they really yell at you all the time? I said, yeah. If you work in New York City, the boss is probably going to yell at you all the time. But I just work Saturday and Sunday, all day long. Yeah, it's work, right? So stuff happens, and you know, are you going to get fired from a job? Probably. Will something bad happen medically that you didn't expect? Probably. Will something that you learned in college that you really thought was important all of a sudden be useless? Yeah, the iPhone 6 will be invented, and you'll go, right? So resilience really matters. The ability to get back on the horse, to continue to retrain, to rethink, and to not get discouraged when failure happens. Failure, as you've probably heard, is the biggest opportunity for learning, right? What is the thing that happens right before Bill Gates invents Microsoft, or before Zuckerberg invents Facebook? What's the thing that happens right before that? Failure, right? The previous version didn't work, right? The previous formula didn't work for Einstein. Thomas Edison's, making light bulbs that don't work, hundreds of them, thousands of them, right? So there's a lot of failure that leads to that success. So getting back on the horse, resilience really matters. What's sometimes called perseverance or grit. But the final R is reflection. It's the most important one. Because you don't always need to get back on the horse. Sometimes you've got to figure out you're doing something wrong. And you need to not be on the horse at all. Or doing something else when you're on the horse. So reflection is critical. It's that bit about learning, which is, now that I've learned something new, how do I change for the next time? It's that, okay, now that I've figured out that renting a car in Timbuktu was a little bit weirder than I thought it was going to be, what do I change the next time? It's not just, okay, next time I change money with the guy in the briefcase. It's next time I reevaluate my assumptions. I think a little differently about how I approach this situation. So those three things, relationships, resilience, reflection. That's really the new way to go to college, the new 3 R's. Yes, you're going to learn some stuff, you're going to have content, you'll have courses and classes and credits. But the real goal is to prepare yourself for the unknown, right? You really are preparing for the jobs of the future. You are preparing your mind for the unknown. That is really what you're here to do, because I have no idea what the future holds, what future information you need to learn. So, relax. Truly, where you go to college does not matter. It's how you go to college. This has been discovered over and over and over again, right? It's how you go to college. Do you make those relationships? Do you take the time to think, to ponder, to take advantage of those extra experiences? I have a student said to me the other day, I'm walking down our walkway, and I said, hey, I remember he was a drummer. I said, I know you're a drummer. I said, so you come to the big drum summit. We have 2 of the world's greatest drummers are coming to campus on Friday for this drum summit. I said, oh, no, I'm way too busy, like applying for graduate school. You're a drummer. These are drummers. It's an experience that's right there in front of you. And I do tell this true story to students on the first day of class. I say, so I made that mistake too. Right? I was in college, and these 2 artists, Ella Fitzgerald and Duke Ellington, ever heard of them? They were doing a concert on campus. And I had tickets. And I had a midterm the next day. It's like, I really have to study for that midterm. And I did not go to see Ella Fitzgerald and Duke Ellington, and I never saw them in concert because they both passed away after that. I went to my midterm. I have no idea what midterm it was. I have no idea what grade I got in class. No idea. But so those experiences, it's how you go to college that matters, not where that really matters. So it also doesn't matter what you major in, right? Doesn't matter what you major in. You can try to predict what you think will be a useful major, but finding your passions, finding things that you enjoy, that make you excited, give you a sense of purpose. And that may not be obvious, but having a sense of purpose is much more important than having a particular major. And so you may not find that in 4 years. I changed my major 9 times in college. I think I still hold the record. You could go for the record. So that process, I know it's a cliche, but it really is important because passions are transferable. So relax. Your major doesn't matter. You're going to take a variety of disciplines. What you're really there to learn is about yourself, about all of that stuff, about learning to change your mind. And so, you know, I don't know if that's, I'm used to talking to college students who are kind of in the throes of this and making that decision. I'm hoping here that maybe you're already much more relaxed about that whole process because you go to a great school that is already teaching you these things and has an attitude and approach to life that's much better than how high your SAT scores are, which, by the way, are not very predictive, which is why schools like Goucher and most schools now are test optional. In fact, we even introduced a video application where you could not send me anything, no transcripts, no SAT scores. You just send me a 2-minute video as to why you want to go to Goucher College, and two pieces of high school work, one of which is a writing sample. But I want to see something authentic, right? I'm actually more interested in my students being authentic, right? I don't want, because you can pay someone to write your college essay. Yeah, I know, you would never do that. And I know this because I was at Georgetown for many years, and I was listening to audition tapes. There's a thing called a cassette tape. Never mind. People used to send these things in the mail to auditions. I'm listening to cellists, and if they should get a scholarship for music at Georgetown. So I'm listening to this guy and I go, wow, this guy's good. Man, this guy sounds like Yo-Yo Ma. Wow, this guy is Yo-Yo Ma. Somebody had put the cassette player up next to the record player and put the Yo-Yo Ma record on the tape of Yo-Yo Ma playing the cello, sent it in to audition, right? Because I can't see who it is. So we went to a video application, because I want to see who's playing the cello. Even though the sound may be terrible, I can actually see it's you. So authenticity matters to me as an artist, but it also matters to us as a college. So we have a separate application. And I actually think that's generally true for colleges. When you write your college essay, yes, have somebody proof it, grammar matters, those things do matter. But what mostly matters is authenticity. Give us a window to your world. Tell us something about yourself. Don't make up stuff. Don't try to, this is the experience you want to hear. Again, if I'm going to be your swim coach, the thing that matters is, do you like water? The rest I can teach you. I need to know about you. I need to know who you are and what matters to you. And that's what really matters. So thank you very much. I'm thrilled to be here. I'll take a couple of questions, but good luck to all of you in college and in life. Thank you. So we left some time for questions. That's really fun to do. Yes, sir.
You mentioned a lot about music. What would you say some of the key points are to becoming a successful musician?
Flexibility. So the music industry has also changed, right? So again, when I was young, the way to make it in music was you practice, you still have to practice. You have to be good at your instrument. You have to have some ability. Some skill is kind of the minimum standard. But you'd go and you audition for agents. You try to get jobs to an A or B. Record company could sign you. And nowadays there's the internet. So record companies release far fewer records. There used to be things called record stores, and there used to be things called records. God, that sounds old. So now you can buy, right, so you can actually market yourself. So musicians and artists, those of you who want to be artists, I created something called arts entrepreneurship, which is now a pretty common minor at various institutions of conservatories of art, because artists are mostly freelancers, right? Beethoven was a freelancer. He didn't have a job. Beethoven's mom was like, when are you going to get a job? Beethoven, no, right? He didn't have a job. He was a freelancer. One of my alums at SMU when I was a dean was Kathy Bates, and she came and talked to a course and such. She said, so I'm Kathy Bates, and she says, how much do you think I make when I'm not making a movie or a TV show? How much do you think she makes? 0. She says, I don't have a job, right? I'm a freelancer, right? You're always a freelancer. So those skills that having your own website, understanding how to get paid, basic contract letters, and making sure you do that. So that ends up being just as important. So you have to have some talent, you have to have something that's unique that you're going to offer. You have to understand the market. But virtually all artists, dancers, musicians, actors are freelancers. So that doesn't mean you need to major in business, but it means you need to think about the market as well as your art. So acquiring that set of skills, having a website, continue practicing, but flexibility, because the truth is, there are lots and lots and lots of ways to make it as a musician. Weddings and bar mitzvahs, you can teach, you could be in you could be on Broadway. There's lots of things other than being in the symphony or being in a rock band. And so understanding the range of those things is really important. And again, it's in some ways, it's the reason why all of this thinking about the jobs of the future and the jobs of the it's all related to the arts. Because in the arts, we already do studio teaching. We already teach a lot of one-on-one. And in the arts, we also have this set of varied skill sets, where everybody in the arts is, if you're going to be an artist, you're the CEO, you're the director of payroll, you're the director of legal, you're the director of contracts, or you're the director of marketing, you're also the product. That's actually the truth about being right. You are all of those jobs. It's the opposite of working for a company. You have to have a wide variety of skills. So focus on your music or on your art. If you neglect the rest, those are the people I know who don't work. The people who man, that guy is so good, he's always late, never hire him again. It's the people who have a little broader set of skills. You can talk more. Yes?
I'm Leon Goucher, President of Fort Trustee for the Thanks for coming. I appreciate this conversation. One thing that I wanted to ask you about is that you're talking about a sea change in thinking, education, and learning. But we have all these people who have gone through this process already, who are out working in any number of professions. What do you recommend to them to sort of catch up with this new
Well, so the question is, what do I recommend to people who are out there trying to retool? And this is of course, a big issue for our country. That we have lots and lots of people used to work at manufacturing jobs, which have largely gone away. And so, do they go back to school? What do we want them to learn how to do? So, my other favorite example is that the major that made the most money in 2014. If you want to know what majors make the most money, by the way, go to payscale.com. Right? So what was the major that made you the most money if you graduated in 2014? Come on, somebody. You can Google it on your phone. I think you had 10 seconds. Yes? Engineering. That's correct. What type of engineering? Petroleum engineering with a minor in Arabic. That was the number one major they had in 2014. Last year, 100,000 petroleum engineers were laid off in Texas alone. That's 100,000 people who were going, man, that poetry course really came in useful. Right? Whatever that, right? Because they just got laid off because the price of gas has fallen, people aren't confident, right? There's not as many weapons, there's not as much work for petroleum engineers. So what do you do with all those people? Well, so the people that were flexible, those are people who can learn new things, they've immediately figured out how to do something else. So there's a public policy question here, which is what do you do to help people retrain, to get them back to community college, etc. But the truth is that if you have a phone or an internet connection, you have access to all of these courses. Harvard and Stanford and MIT have all put most of these things online. If you go to edX, this is the Harvard MIT program. If you go to Coursera, which is the Stanford version of this, you can actually get Coursera. You can actually take the quantum mechanics course that I took in college. Because Professor Susskind is doing exactly what he did 40 years ago. He's standing there covered in chalkboard. And now it's been videoed in high definition. And I'm going, wait, I don't remember that because I was sleeping, but I was there. So the question is, if you can, but MOOCs, as they're called, massive open online courses, are very useful. But most people don't complete them, right? Only about 5% of the people who start them make it to the end. But college grads are twice as likely to complete MOOCs. So what is the thing they learned in college that helps them complete free open online courses? They learn how to take courses. So one of my other cuckoo ideas is that we would require all seniors to take a MOOC, right? One of these open online courses from someplace else. We would give you a little bit of help, but the idea is that when you graduate, you're going to need to be your own boss, your own teacher. You're in charge of your own learning. That in college and in school, there's this kind of artificial iteration where someone's looking, did you do your homework? Did you do your homework? Did you do your homework? And after graduation, that goes away. The boss isn't standing there going, did you do your homework? There's no life coach. Well, I guess you could hire a life coach. But there's generally nobody sitting there going, have you applied for new jobs? Did you update your resume? Did you learn a new skill today? Right? You have to be that voice in your own head saying, did you learn a new skill today? Did you stop watching cat videos? There's a course here you can do. Right? There's a free course in Harvard that you could take right now that could give you skills you didn't have. And so the entrepreneurs, the freelance people who are eager to learn new things and who are able to integrate those things are going to be successful. So those tools are now more available than they ever were. So, if I'm giving someone advice, I said, look, turn on your computer. Look up free open online courses in whatever area that you want to be and start learning. Start learning new things. As a public policy issue, I think there are other things that we have to do as a society to help people retrain. But again, that's only going to be temporary. You've got to get out of the mode that once I learn, if I become a plumber or become this, that I can do that for a while. Maybe for a while, but not the rest of your life. That economy has truly changed, which is why I say it's not the information age, it's the learning economy. Those who know how to learn will do the best. All right, got one more? Who wants to know? Yeah, okay, so when you go to your college trips, and you say, welcome to, you go look at college, you say, I want to meet the president. Try that. I'm interested in your college, but I want to meet the president. And see how that works. And especially in big schools, it won't work. So this is your chance. What do you want to know? And no, I did not sit there when I was your age thinking I want to be a college president. That thought never occurred to me. I didn't even know there was a job. Yes, sir.
Having attended a large research university, one of the questions that I have for you is how I never felt like professors were particularly interested in me, while I might have been interested to get to know them. So how do you give incentives to your own professors or cognitive coaches to get to know their students better in a less formal setting?
Great question. So I too, in fact, when I took this job, this is the first liberal arts college I've actually been at, and so I've been at 5 R1s before this, and so they were a little suspicious. It's like you come to these places that are mostly focused on research. And it's true that at most of those places where I spent my career, your job was really based upon how much you publish. My first job was you need a book every 18 months. You need to write a new book every 18 months. That's really all we care about. You should see your students periodically, talk to your TA. But if you're a good teacher, that's nice. If you're a lousy teacher, you won't lose your job unless you don't write that book every 18 months. Right? It's pretty clear. So those were the hiring instructions. So when I hire, I'm very clear to people. I say, look, teaching is first. I want you to take care of your research. I want you to have some profile. But teaching first. You will not keep your job here. You will not keep your tenure if you are not primarily a teacher. But I also value the residential experiences, all those what I call soft structures, right? So I have faculty who live on campus. In every residence hall on campus, there are faculty living there. I give faculty a discount to eat in the meal hall. I tell them, look, and they say, you mean if I go to lacrosse games, it matters? I say, yes, actually. I'm not taking attendance, but it matters to students if I spend all semester long working on my dance recital or I'm on the lacrosse team and you never come to that, then I don't think you care about me as a person, right? It's kind of like with your parents, right? It's not any different, right? You say you care, but where are you? You're never there, right? Right? You show that you care by being there. Of course, part of how you be there is also being on social media, which is another kind of interesting thing for this generation, that Than sending a text message on a Sunday afternoon like, hey, remember Foucault is due tomorrow. It's actually, or skip problem number 6 if you're stuck on it, right? But that bit of attention on the weekend through social media is another way to actually show that you care. Turns out the research tells us you learn more when you perceive that your faculty and staff and professors care about you. By the way, it turns out they don't actually have to care. It's the perception increases performance. Right? That perception increases performance. In the same way that stress decreases performance. So if I tell you you're going to have to swim at the Olympics, you just became a worse swimmer. Because anxiety and stress reduce performance, which is why midterms and finals are bad, because they generally reduce performance. Right? So we want lots of small stakes assessment. So I give a test every day. Right? Test every day before every class. Because recall really does matter for your brain, but high stakes does not matter, right? The science of how you learn. So there are lots of little incentives, again, nudges is what the economists call them. Lots and lots and lots of nudges on my campus to get people to do things that I want them to do, but not to say you must do this. So I'll leave you with the last thing. The things that are most important for your learning are not teachers. We know a lot about the brain. The 4 things that are most important for your learning: sleep, water, exercise, and eating. Those are the big 4. Right? So, and actually I've added time, because you also need time. So I tell my students, when I see you on campus, how's it going? They go, sweet. So remember those things, right? Sleep, water, exercise, eating, and time. If you do those things, you learn. If you don't, sleep is the most important. No matter how good the teacher is, if you got 6 hours of sleep a night, after 2 weeks, you function cognitively like somebody who's been up for 48 hours straight. You may have distracted yourself with coffee, but in fact, you are cognitively functioning like a person who has been kept up for 48 hours. That is how your brain is now operating. So that other stuff really, really matters. And so again, how can I nudge people to get more sleep, drink more water before their first class? Because your brain is dehydrated in the morning, right? Your brain has just had 8, maybe 6 hours of sleep, right? So it's dehydrated. You need 2 glasses of water, and that improves your performance in your first class way more than coffee. Coffee doesn't actually work. Coffee's a masker, right? It makes you think that you're more awake, but you're not. Right? Your brain is just pretending, right? Exercise. Even 4 hours. You exercise 4 hours after you've studied, you remember more. This is just science, right? So those are the kinds of things that we're using to inform how we help nudge people into different kinds of relationships with students. One more time. All right. Oh, I got one more. Can I do one more?
Dr. Bowen, are leaders born or made? And how and should we instill character at a time when character isn't really valued?
Do you have a harder question? So that's a great question. So that's in some ways that's the eternal question. That's the nature-nurture question. It's related to the grit question, which is we now know how to measure grit, resilience. We're not exactly sure if you can move it, right? Can I do things that will? I know that certain things select for grit and resilience. Marines tend to have more grit than college students. Sorry. But it's not clear that it's something the Marines did, right? Maybe self-selection, right? People who, so we don't actually know. So, the scientific answer to your question is, from the cognitive psychology perspective, is that we really don't know. We really don't know how to do those things. Now, of course, the good news in life, and the good news about the liberal arts, is that science is not the only perspective. Right? Science is one lens, one way to look at the world. But philosophically, theologically, there are other ways to do that. And in that answer, I would say that absolutely, that the most important thing in terms of building character is to be a role model. Right? It starts with you. And so for leadership, for faculty, college, I say the thing that most matters about my job is not the PhD, it's not what I learned how to learn, it's not the philosophy, it's integrity. It simply starts with integrity. And so being a person of integrity, in my view, is that you talked about the leadership, the collaboration, all of those things, in my view, stream from integrity. Because part of that self-awareness and knowing what you don't know, that's a whole lot easier if you've got integrity. Right? If you're able to look at yourself and say, you know, I don't have that, and I can be honest with that, then that's really the first step. And that turns out to actually be a character of leadership that people care about. Your self-awareness and your integrity. So, my suggestion to everybody is that that's a question that our country really needs to answer, and that the answer is only going to come from looking at it through multiple lenses. We can't just look at it through science, we can't just look at it through theology. All of our disciplines have something to contribute to knowing more about that question. Thank you. Thanks very much.